All I have to say at the conclusion of watching today's NASCAR Cup Series race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course for the first time ever, I just have one word to say. What? Hey there, race fans. It's race day, top 5 with me, Frank 5. Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's one of the most famous race tracks that NASCAR goes to on the entire schedule, other than Daytona National Speedway. This place is historic for the Brickyard 400, the Indianapolis 500 for the IndyCar Series, many historical events. Today, the Cup Series returned to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but this time, instead of the oval configuration, which we've been accustomed to since running here in 1994, we went on the road course today. And boy, oh boy, did it put on quite an interesting race. Carnage, drama, and a surprise winner. Let's talk about what went down. Number 1, AJ Allmendinger. Yes, AJ Allmendinger. Not Kyle Larson, not Chase Elliott, not Martin Truex, not Kyle Busch, not Denny Hamlin, not Chase Briscoe, not Austin Cindric. AJ Allmendinger won the first ever Cup Series road course race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course in today's Verizon 200 at the Brickyard, holding off Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, and Matt DiBenedetto to win today's race. AJ Allmendinger has been known for being a tremendous road course racer since he came to NASCAR in 2007. He showcased his road course talent at the beginning, and when he started getting competitive cars in Richard Petty Motorsports and JTG Doherty Racing, which he joined in 2014, he definitely became a fan favorite not only in those races, but in the entire sport in general. Well, AJ Allmendinger picked up his first Cup Series victory in the 2014 Watkins Glen race in a tremendous battle with Marcus Ambrose for the win. And Allmendinger was so hype on the radio after all he had been through his career with a suspension in 2012, which prevented him from competing the rest of the season for Team Penske. He was let go by the team. He got back in the car later in that year. And then he drove part-time in all of Cup and Xfinity in 2013 while also driving for Team Penske's IndyCar program, while also competing in the Indy 500 that year, ended up getting a 7th place finish in that race, I believe. He did lead some laps. Allmendinger has been known for being a great road course racer and was on the top tier list of drivers to look out for every time we went to a road course. Well, ever since that 2014 win at Watkins Glen, Allmendinger's been a good driver bound for the wins on the road courses, but other tracks he really hadn't been the best, and the performance hadn't been there. After the 2018 season, Allmendinger was officially released from JTG Doherty Racing in favor of Ryan Preece, and he just waited for another opportunity to come in NASCAR, and that came with Colleague Racing in 2019 in the NASCAR Xfinity Series when he drove a 3rd car for the team and ended up having some relatively good results. The first few races were pretty good, even despite disqualifications in both those races for failing post-race tech, but nonetheless still a very good showing by Almaninger. He picked up his first win for the team in the 2019 Roval race at Charlotte, and that got him a couple more races with the team the next year, while also driving a couple races for the team when they started the Cup program in 2020. Almaninger got his first ever Oval win in Atlanta last year in the Xfinity Series, and then won the Roval later in the year in a torrential downpour. During the offseason, Almaninger announced with Matt Colleague and Chris Rice, the 2 executives of Colleague Racing, that he was going to drive for the team in the Xfinity Series this year, full-time competing for the championship. He's been very good this year. He won at Las Vegas. He won at Matt Colleague's home track in Mid-Ohio, which was a road course, surprisingly. And he's just been very good this year as a championship favorite. But yesterday, he came so close to winning the Xfinity race, he just made a couple mistakes, but he had to fight his way back to the front, but ended up finishing second to Austin Cindric. Today, he ran top 10 for the majority part, but he had to restart deep in the field in the final stage because he had a pit road speeding penalty. Luckily, he was able to work his way up to the top 15, which looked like he was going to finish there. Then we had a caution come out with 10 to go, and then chaos ensued after that. He restarted 17th, and through all that chaos, which I'll get to in a little bit, AJ Allmendinger was able to pull off an incredibly stunning victory. I mean, he's a great road course racer, but this team is part-time, and, they're not running every single weekend with Hendrick and Gibbs and Penske and Stuart Haas and RCR and Ganassi and all those teams. They're just running part-time this year, but this team is just getting their feet in the water because they're going to move to full-time next year with 2 cars. One will be driven by Justin Haley. The other will be with multiple drivers. I'm pretty sure AJ Allmendinger is going to be one of those guys. But Almaninger benefited from the 2 leaders, Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe, which I'll get to that story in a second, make contact on the last overtime of the race, and Almaninger took the lead, and he did not look back, and he looked forward to his second career Cup Series victory, a big moment. And he's another thing about AJ Allmendinger, when he wins, he gets so excited, he gets hyper. It's a lot of things that we've seen in the past. We kind of seen that dissipate, but hopefully this allows other drivers to be hyper in their victory. I mean, he's an excellent, he's excellent when it comes, not excellent. He is very hyper when he wins, and that's what we like to see, a lot of enthusiasm out of a driver when they win a race. And Almaninger definitely showed that today. He said, "We just won Indy. Let's go!" Almaninger is such a nice dude, and got a feeling he'll still be a threat for the Xfinity Series Championship later this year. Great drive today by Almaninger and the whole colleague racing organization. Number 2, the drama on the last restart between Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe. On the last restart of the race, running side by side off into the 90-degree angle at turn 1, Briscoe ran a little bit wide of the racetrack and went off into the grass. And he came back on the track in front of Denny Hamlin when Hamlin was clearly the car in front before Briscoe overshot the corner. Briscoe rejoined the track, but it was ahead of Denny Hamlin cutting through the grass, and that is he gained an unfair advantage over Hamlin. So NASCAR came on the radio to the number 14 team and said, "You're getting a stop-and-go penalty, you're getting black flagged." Well, Briscoe didn't know it at the time, and he bumped into the rear of Denny Hamlin at turn 10, sending Hamlin around and out of contention for the win. Briscoe eventually stopped at turn 11, and was able to settle for 26th place finish. Well, it turns out NASCAR parked him for the race because of that action, for not listening to the black flag. Hamlin and Briscoe spoke to each other post-race. It was a very candid conversation. They were upset, but there wasn't any shoving. They just had a civil conversation explaining what went down. Briscoe admitted, "I didn't mean to get into him. I didn't know I was getting black flagged until after I spun him around. I did not know that my crew chief was about to tell me I'm getting black flagged for cutting turn 1 and gaining an unfair advantage." He said, "I don't like to drive dirty. I didn't mean to get into Hamlin. I apologize. I owe up to my actions." Denny Hamlin was very upset, but luckily he kept his cool. He didn't, blurt out any cuss words or anything on the air. He just had a conversation with Briscoe and just kept his temper the best he possibly could. He was upset because Hamlin has still yet to win a race this season. Chase Briscoe is looking for his first career win at the track where he is a Hoosier native. He is from Indiana, and he won the inaugural Xfinity road course race last year. You didn't think Briscoe was hungry for this win today? I mean, the dude's a rookie in full-time in Cup this year, and he's trying to get into the playoffs. He's running out of opportunities. He's way back in the points. He pretty much is in a must-win. This was his opportunity today. But both of these guys had to overcome a lot today. Briscoe pitted a couple times in the last part of the stage, and it looks like he was going to settle for 32nd. Then when all the leaders pitted with 10 to go, him and Hamlin cycled to the front, and it looked like those two were in a position to possibly settle for top 5s because we felt like the fresh tire guys were going to get them, but they both held their ground until the very end of that last overtime. I get they're both frustrated, but at least they both had a candid conversation. Helmets off, obviously, and they wore their race caps or whatever they were wearing, and they had a candid conversation, discussed it through, and it seems like they're going to have no issues with this going forward. If so, NASCAR will probably intervene. NASCAR did say that they were looking into the communication for the 14 car towards the end of the race because they didn't know that Briscoe got the word that he was going to get black flagged and had to serve a stop and go for the jumping turn, getting an unfair advantage in turn 1. But it was a shame. Both these guys had a chance to win the race today. Very unfortunate for Hamlin fans, but there's one bright side. I can say this. Congratulations! You have officially locked yourself into the playoffs on points. The only guy to do it so far. I mean, Hamlin had a 300-point advantage over the cutoff line coming to this race. I mean, we knew after this race he was going to be locked in. However, though, you've lost the regular season championship lead for now. Because Kyle Larson got a top 5, Denny Hamlin settled for a 25th or 23rd place finish. I can't remember. He finished top 25. Unfortunately, he's now back behind Larson in the regular season championship lead by 22 points. So he's going to need to win to get some of those points back. Or, I mean, you already are in the playoffs. So, I mean, you'd love to win, though, but you'd also like to get that regular season championship to get 15 bonus points to the 5 points you have this year for winning 5 stages. So, Hamlin, you got to get going if you're going to be able to be a part of the championship battle, because the way things are, as consistent as you've been with no wins this year, and if you don't win the regular season championship, I think Denny Hamlin could be an early exit. Not round of 16. Round of 12 is most likely. Number 3, Carnage on the last few laps of the race. Unbelievable. the caution came out with 10 laps to go when a piece of debris was stuck underneath the turn 6 curbing, and on the first restart, after the caution came out with 10 to go, Martin Truex Jr. went around after getting bumped from behind by his teammate Christopher Bell. Cars were running over the curbing, debris was flying. Corey LaJoie went over the inside curbing and caught some air like he had his pilot's license, and he was Tom Cruise from Top Gun. A lot of guys went over that curbing this weekend. And then the lap later, the top 3 went over the curbing at turn 6 on the outside portion, and then William Byron, Kyle Busch, and Joey Logano all hopped over the curbing, damaging their splitters because the curbing was beginning to come up, and they all went around, hit the tire barriers, and then more cars followed from behind. Daniel Suarez, Christopher Bell, Ryan Preece, Justin Haley. So many cars piled in after that. Kevin Harvick, James Davison. A lot of guys piled in after that. A lot of guys were pretty upset about what happened there. I mean, the curbing began to come up. So track officials went out there and actually took away the turn 6 curbing and only left that inside curb where guys have been getting, jump over. You run over it, you're going to get air and probably fall back on the track and damage your car. It happened the following restart when Michael McDowell got some air on the right front and went around into the pack, collecting both of the Richard Childress cars, and Austin Dillon and Tyler Reddick, who were both battling for the last spot in points at the moment. And Dillon did not finish the race, but Reddick did, and he was able to finish 21st with a damaged car. And by the way, he won both stages today, so that helped him. And Dillon did get some stage points, but Reddick now has 28 points over Austin Dillon, despite all that went down on that first overtime restart incident. A lot of guys went around in that section. A lot of guys were pretty frustrated about it. Joey Logano, William Byron, Daniel Suarez was pretty upset. He said, we're not racing like gentlemen out there today. We were racing like a bunch of children. They're very immature on the track. We had no respect for each other out on the racetrack. I mean, it's 3,400. That's a 3,400-pound car going over that curbing at that speed and just lifting in the air and just going around. Total chaos in there. That's going to be one of the main topic points this week after seeing what we witnessed right there. Number 4, some of the big drivers of the race had some pretty up and down days, but mostly were able to come out on the good end of it. Some, not so much. Kyle Larson had the dominant car today after winning last weekend's race at Watkins Glen. He led 28 laps today. Unfortunately, with the fresh tires and those last few restarts, it just wasn't enough. He didn't have enough laps. He had to settle for a third-place finish, but nonetheless, it was a good run for the 5 team. Chase Elliott, the road course king, came in obviously as the favorite. I mean, if you're in Las Vegas, like the betting odds favor Chase Elliott, then Kyle Larson and other guys like AJ Allmendinger and Austin Cindric and Martin Truex Jr. Elliott had a good race car today. He led 14 laps, and it looked like he and Larson were going to be the guys that would battle it out for the win late. But unfortunately, on the last pit stop for the caution for the debris on turn 6 curbing with 10 to go, when all the leaders pitted except for like Hamlin and Briscoe, Elliott pitted, but when they were jacking on the right side, the jack came down too quickly when they were just about to put on their new right side tires, and they fell from second when they came into the pits back to 12th and 16th on the restart. But fortunately, the 9 car was able to dodge some of the chaos at the very end and was able to come out with a 4th place finish. So I think most LA fans can, accept this was a good result given all that went down on that last pit stop. I mean, it could have been a whole lot worse for the 9 team, but they were still able to squeak a top 5 out of it and get together a good result and bring home a relatively clean race car. There were some dents in that car, but he was still able to bring it home in one piece so they can bring it for the Roval the next time they run on a road course, which isn't for 2 months now. Other guys, Kyle Busch had a really good race car. He started 21st, complaining about the car all weekend, but he fought his way up to the top 5. He was part of that big, massive crash at the first incident of the turn 6 curbing late in the race, but he was able to finish the race with the top 20. Martin Truex Jr. had to overcome early contact in the race and pitting early and fought his way back up to the top 5, and he was part of that incident late with him and his teammate Christopher Bell, and he was only able to get a 15th place out of it, which isn't a total bummer, all things considering. But a lot of guys had a lot of misfortunes. Kurt Busch, didn't talk a lot about him today. He had some damage on his car, still squeezed out a 6th place finish. Ryan Newman, he's not known for being a road course racer. He came out today with a back end car, a car that was banged up in the rear end, and got a 10th place finish. Pretty good finish for that team, and possibly Ryan Newman's final Brickyard 400 because we don't know a Brickyard race because we don't know what's going to happen to him after this year, knowing that Brian Koslowski is replacing him in the 6th car. Brian Koslowski, speaking of which, he stayed out early in the race with not pitting at all, and he fell back in the pack. He actually went around in the race, and the back end hit the wall and before entering turn 11 or turn 12, and he had to pit. He went a couple laps down. He got all them back. He almost got back into the top 15. Spun again late. In all honesty, Brian Koslowski is not really known for a road course racer. He needs to step up his game, especially with the playoffs coming up. And that Roval, you're going to have to run well there if you're going to be able to make it to the round of 8. A lot of guys went through a lot today. It was an up and down race for some of the contenders, and some of the contenders that we felt like were going to have a good result and battle for the win, but didn't get the result that they had hoped for. And number 5, a lot of drama even surrounding this race. A lot of the Cup drivers were not really happy that we were changing from the oval configuration to the road course configuration. A lot of guys were skeptical about this move. I think the reason that Roger Penske, the new owner now of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which he bought last year, even before COVID came around, he bought the Speedway. He's the owner of the Speedway and the IndyCar series, and also he operates a NASCAR team and an IndyCar team. That dude's got a lot of money. But I think Roger Penske and NASCAR wanted the road course to happen because the oval product from the 90s and the early 2000s that we had some great racing and incredible finishes, incredible moments in the history books of NASCAR at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We really haven't had the last couple of years. The racing product has been kind of meh to not so good. I mean, 2015 was probably the worst Brickyard 400 race I ever saw in my life because nobody could pass. You could hardly pass. 2017 was a demolition derby after a long red flag. We had, by the way, had 2 red flags for both those incidents late in the race today. I mean, the racing product in the oval has been kind of dull the last few years. I felt like with the road course today, it was going to bring a lot more enthusiasm to the race. And there were a lot more fans that I noticed in the grandstands for today's race than in years past at the oval. Obviously, we couldn't have them last year because COVID was around, and we were in the early stage of the pandemic, not knowing when fans were going to be able to come back. But it was a really interesting race at the beginning, and then again, drivers' comments after that turn 6 incident late in the race were pretty upset about it. Daniel Suarez was not happy. Austin Dillon compared those crashes at the end to like a demolition derby, like you're racing bumper go-karts or something, and you're just like crashing left and right. I understand some of the drivers' frustration, but again, we need a good show for the fans, and I think they got it today. Whether it was good, I mean, there was good drama and bad drama coming out of this race in general. And you're going to have that in a lot of NASCAR races. My overall take in the race, I like the road course. I want to give it another chance. Let's see what Indianapolis decides if we're going to do this again next year. I mean, we're not taking Indianapolis off the schedule, whether fans like it or not. We need to keep Indianapolis on the schedule. If we're going back to the oval configuration next year, so be it. If we're going to stick with the road course configuration that we saw today, so be it. I mean, I really liked the race. I will admit the crashes at the very end kind of ruined the racing product, but we had a good dramatic finish at the end. We got to see a guy that's a good road course racer that's not full-time at Cup go out and beat the big boys. I mean, Colleague Racing's not a top-tier team yet, but they do have Richard Childress engines, and those are pretty good engines. So, all in all, I felt like the road course at Indianapolis today was very, very interesting. Very intriguing. I thought it was a good race. I'm not going to give it it's a 100% great race. I felt like it was like an 85% good race. I'm taking it down from what I felt it was going to be a 90% because of those crashes at the very end. But all in all, I felt like Indianapolis put on a good show with the road course. And a good weekend overall. We had IndyCar yesterday. Will Power ended up winning that race. And we had the Xfinity Series after that, which Austin Cindric won. And Cindric competed in today's race, his last Cup race of the year before he goes to Penske full-time in 2022. He came away with a 9th place finish, which was pretty good considering he kind of didn't have a top 10 run going today because he spun around like twice and that cost him track position. But all in all, an interesting weekend in Indianapolis and an interesting race today that has AJ Allmendinger getting his 2nd career Cup Series victory. So, with all that rambling aside, next weekend we're off to the Irish Hills in Michigan with only 2 races left in the regular season. The heat is on. The intensity is beginning to pick up as the races in the regular season are beginning to wind down, and you have 2 more opportunities left. With 14 drivers now in, 13 on wins, Denny Hamlin on points. Who will be the last 2? If we don't get a new winner next week, Kevin Harvick's locked in on points. Daytona is going to be the wild card, but next weekend we will see what happens. Will Harvick be able to win there like he did last year? Will Denny Hamlin get his first win of the season? Can Chase Briscoe make up for a race that possibly could have been his today and get it next weekend? All those questions will be answered when we go racing next week in the Irish Hills in Michigan. So subscribe, like. I hope you guys enjoyed today's Indianapolis road course race for the NASCAR Cup Series. Leave a comment below if you liked did and what your take is for having this race possibly next year on the schedule. Congratulations to AJ Allmendinger and Colleague Racing. You guys are Cup Series winners, and we can't wait to see what this team does next year in 2022. Have a good night, all.